So hello. You all know me. I'm Campbell. I feel like JC, DJ. You could say that. You all know me. I work for Bika. We make lab software, basically just a way for people to keep their information in the laboratory straight. A lot of people use Excel spreadsheets or Microsoft databases to handle this when their lab is still small. And when the lab reaches a point where that's no longer feasible, they look around for software. They also require software to be, or they require certain processes to be accredited. And the software that's out there is all commercial and prohibitively expensive. So we emulate them as best we can. Hello. So we're not alone. Bika Lab Systems has, as you can see by the title we give ourselves, or the LIMS itself, collective. We're also focusing on community. Has started to attract other service providers. We've found ourselves in a space where there's too much work, which is great. Labs in Barcelona are Jordi and Pau are amazing guys. They've done a lot of work. We've also got a couple of new additions to the little club of people who offer services for Bika. So it's starting to pick up and become something. And the reason for that is because we've built it on Plone all along. The functionality we give people and have given them since Plone 2 has been something that every lab needs. They have their operating procedures, they have their protocols stored in the system. We try and do all our development in the open, which is a little bit embarrassing at times, especially because there are very few of us, and so everybody knows who made the mistake. There's no hiding, there's no safety in numbers. We run a public Jira, GitHub public mailing lists, and we run online demonstration installations which have been around for years. So the data can be a bit wild. It's a great way to test what's going on. And it also is very honest and open. They break quite often. People climb in and change the entire site language to Russian. It goes sideways in strange ways. Originally, Bika has been around, this software has been around for 12 or 13 years now. Originally written in C and then Delphi, and then hired out to a company who created it on Plone 2 using page templates. Yeah, the original Plone implementation was upfront, yeah. I almost want to start a conversation with you now about that, but I won't. I think quite a few people here still know upfront, yeah. I never met upfront. All I know about upfront is what I hear from you guys, yeah, and Lamuna, yeah. I remember there was a story about that. This is the accreditation that people actually require the software for. Also, you must know these slides were not A, not mine, and B, not created for. They were created actually to when someone is pitching the LIMS to a prospective client. But since I'm not talking about development or coding stuff now today, they'll do fine. We forked also for health LIMS because there is a lot of differences there. Adding doctors, patients, and trying to slim things down in creative ways because you're talking about a lot of data as opposed to a lab that maybe has, you know, basically their data is the data they've created. They're not connecting to any patient systems or healthcare systems at hospitals. And we have an Interlab package. There's actually a good few more branches, but I'll talk about those now. An Interlab, which is not LIMS, it's also based on Plone. This is pure dexterity. Actually, the rest of these are currently almost pure archetypes, a little bit of dexterity. Interlab is for proficiency testing, basically competitions labs have with themselves. Again, part of their accreditation, and again, something that's very expensive in the real world. These are graphs, slightly out of date and not full screen, showing our, I guess, normalized PyPy numbers. This is one of my great pleasures, is seeing that every time we push a release out, the amount of downloads, obviously it plateaus at a point where everyone gets bored. The amount of downloads raises faster and faster and faster to meet that. We get more downloads in a much shorter time. And this, I think, is excluding downloads that are made by PyPy mirrors and whatever else. So I don't know what really all these people are doing. We get contacted by very few of them. We get about 6 or 7 or 10, depending on the month, 1,000 downloads a month, which sounds like an awful lot for something that's a little bit niche-y. This is your logo here pitch, yes, because these are some of the people who've paid us to put this all together. Some of them I'm very proud of. I mean, we haven't yet finished this project, but I'm proud to be working with the University of Washington. And yeah, every single one of these customers has really put it in. 2 or 3, 4 of these are still underway.
How much are they more South African and how much are they more international?
South African companies, this BBK Labs logo, I know they're South African because they are the original client that began Bika LIMS 1.0, the Plone 2.0 version. Everyone else here is an international. Oh, and SAF, of course, is Stellenbosch University. They have a whole lot of very, very fancy instruments, and they lie there waiting for students to come and entertain themselves. So they have a department for monetizing those, and then they need to keep track of what's going on. Yeah, I'm proud of actually a lot of these. I'm proud of De Bortley Wines. That's gone far, and it's not a small deal. It's a big deal. This is just to say we're for real. It was fun. I'll talk about this more tomorrow. But again, this is just sort of it makes me happy that we're being seen as real software by the rest of the world. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that when you're sitting in a hall working on something. These are the main things that sell us, that come from Plone, and this has always been. Obviously, everything is a workflow engine. It has to be. We've had one security breach or security issue in the time that we've been running, and it was basically just unassigned workflows on content objects allowed them to be publicly accessible, or default workflows, and we ended up with the customer's data on Google. The rest here, this document management system and the lab portal, basically allowing people to create a website based around their LIMS for internal and external use, so that their customers and their internal guys come to the same place. We get all this for free. We get a lot more than this for free, but this is what sells us, and it's all Plone. And of course, this sells us. This is our basic workflow. So we'll take samples from the client. They'll log into the system and say, please, I would like analyses to be done on a sample of something or the other. And then they will send the sample to the lab. We also have an alternate workflow, which is a switch in the back end, which allows, say, a municipal water lab to have, they have sampling runs where they actually go out and collect their own samples. Samples can be flagged for preservation and then received into the lab. There's a JavaScript hook in the browser waiting for barcode scans of samples that haven't been received. They can be assigned to batch, and then sample preparation begins. And in sample preparation, we sometimes have 20 or 30 steps of workflow, depending on the client. UW specifically has something like 25 workflow steps, and their samples last for 6 or 7 months before they even get to the lab. Results capture I'll show, and then the workflow allows the QC guys to retract if they're not happy, or to retest, and that lands for verification, which must be done by somebody else. At that point, if something has been verified, it is available to the client, so you can no longer simply retract it. You have to go through a long rejection process, which brings it back here and sends out alerts to the client to inform them that something has changed in case they did have a look at it. And then publication, prints PDFs, emails, what have you, SMSs, even faxes and printing files. From this point, you can also invalidate, and that's also a real pain because you shouldn't be. This is our listing view. It's not based on anything that was done in Plone, and now having looked at Plone 5, you can see that we can change this, we can throw this out, and add the few things that we still need to the Plone views as behaviors. So I'm not very proud of this, but it did the job. This is the form I use to add an analysis request. So this is the form that a client will see. It's not a great form, but I'll show you just now. We do have a couple of other templates for this. And recently, in the last release, 3.19, which was done last week, the JavaScript and whatnot behind this form has been completely changed to allow this to become a little bit easier. This is the main, for most of our usage, we allow Plone to generate forms. I'm okay with ugly. We allow Plone to generate ads, edits, and views. This one is probably our greatest bane. We allow spreadsheets to be uploaded, which create all of these objects behind the scene. Where am I here? This is the same form. Yeah, this is the same form. It allows us to enter, when we select a template, it will have an analysis specification attached to it, which will say for each of these particular analytes, we need a certain range of values and an error tolerance, and these can be changed in line for each request. I don't really know what this slide is for. That we have profiles and templates. Profiles being just a collection of analyses, because there can be hundreds or thousands of them and the forms get a little bit complex. Just some views. Doesn't look like much. All right. We allow batching of samples, so things that relate, and this came from UW as well, things that relate can be looked at together, and instead of editing each analysis request and modifying the results manually, you see each analysis request on a single row, and you're able to edit the results in each column. This doesn't allow some of the more advanced behavior, but it is a great shortcut. This as well is that same listing view we use, which has one-click shortcuts for workflow transitions underneath, etc. Yeah, the barcode scanning story, this is the sample reception step. It is what it is. The buttons to print labels, and that also can happen automatically when the sample is received, or automatically when the sample is created, depending on if the sample is being created by the lab or received by the lab. We have worksheets, which is a great feature, as in a very large feature. I guess they could be called, they were called at one point job cards. This means if you have a collection of samples that need to go into a machine, you'll have 40 samples, and each one of those samples needs 5 or 10 analyses done, and each one of those analyses could have several results that are used to calculate the final result. So this all gets rendered in one great big table. And exported to an instrument, and then imported from an instrument. Right. This is the worksheet. Yes. This is our first sample here, and the second sample here. The worksheet supports, where are we? Not here. Control samples for testing that instruments aren't drifting. Blanks to just make sure that the instrument is accurate. Whether it's drifting or not at that point is irrelevant. Duplicates, again, to check for drifting. And these templates can be stored for worksheets, so that for a lab manager or for a lab user, when they know that a particular machine takes a particular setup, they can just decide at the beginning of the day that this is what I'm doing and click one button. This is the analysis specification for a particular template. So in this place we will say, instead of entering the minimum, maximum and errors for a particular thing inside the analysis request add form, we can define templates for this too. This is just, I guess, for explaining to people who get lost in forms what things are. I don't think that's you guys. We have a set of instruments that we've been working on. Installing instruments or loading data interfaces for the instruments is not easy because they don't like to share the information. They usually have their own system. You buy the instrument, they'll sell you a commercial LIMS with it. But we're working hard on it. Power and Geordie again, they've been doing amazing jobs. This form is part of the instrument importer. So each one, and some of them have an amazing ton of options here. AST diffusion. So these are our calculations. When I first met the system, there were 3 calculations. There was a total dissolved solids, there was a titration, and I think one more small one. These were hard-coded in TAL somewhere. So that was it. There were 3. And now we have, I can't really show you because I'm not full screen, but we can sometimes have an entire page of Python statement, a single Python statement, which is not optimal because it can be quite tricky to write, but including the values of these, what we call interim fields, which would be the 3 separate fields that you're now required to enter in order to generate a result, as well as being able to look outwards for other analysis services on the same analysis request. So entering a keyword here for an analysis service will automatically require that analysis service as a dependency of the analysis request if this calculation is required by any of the services that are required by the client, if they're selected on the AR add form. So it is already just a little bit convoluted. We have 1 or 2 small things that we would need to add before we could just leap ship and jump to the Plone 5 views, which I love so much. Our listing view allows objects to be categorized and very simply here expanded like an accordion. Those objects inside the accordion unexpanded are retrieved via AJAX and then placed into the form. It allows us to select items here and transition them with a click, and I don't think that's such a big deal, but for lab users, it is rather important that everything happens with a single click, so we try and make everything very, very simple. And inline edits, we allow a selection here for a single choice, and text entry, numbers, checkboxes. Basically, that's all. But the inline edits are a great feature, and I'm hoping maybe we can sprint on that, or at least talk about how that would be sprinted on. So I'm going to maybe trap you guys afterwards. Yeah, sure. We create attachments as full-fledged archetypes and stick them into analysis requests. We have a setup for life-threatening conditions that can be defined. That was created in Bika Health. So if a condition is met, an email is sent or an SMS is sent to make sure that somebody knows something strange is going on. Minimum detection levels and maximum detection levels so that we know if the instrument is out of range, we can actually set that. Past a certain point, obviously, the instrument becomes less accurate, and so the result is meaningless, even if it is a very specific value. We have a whole set of portlets that pop up now, basically work lists to display what it is that has to happen next. I'm pretty sure that we can improve on this with Plone 5 as well. Am I? Do you know that I'm on slide 29 now? And when I got these slides, there were 80 of them. Yeah, I really tried to weed them out. Okay, okay, it was a use case, and basically my specific point is to say that this is all possible because of Plone, and I cannot believe how beautiful Plone is today, and this is going to go to the moon. I'm hoping actually to port to dexterity this year, and we're going to make magic. It's happening. Let me just skip through the rest of these. This is our current use of the control panel. Obviously, everything I do is inspired by the look of Plone. So our control panel is about to get a lot more beautiful too. I guess if I'm out of time, I'm out of time. I was going to talk about health and maybe a bit about Interlab. Really? Okay, go for it. Tell me. If you have any questions, go for it. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. Keep talking. All right, great. So, no screen. Adding patients and doctors to the system is something that we were doing for a long time. When I met Bika, and it was still a Plone 2 bunch of templates, we had a few attempts at that had happened. It's now turned into a real thing. The software is actually software these days. I think I've spoken to you a couple of times, a couple of you, about how this process has been going on. And I feel like we're following the same process that Plone has, and they're at that perfect shiny crest now, and we're a couple of years behind. But we've been working on pretty much exactly the same thing. I didn't know that Plone 1 was just a bunch of templates. It makes me feel good about what I'm seeing. Hey. All right, that's not interesting. This is another format for the AR ad form. These are a lot easier to just modify now, and this is obviously the same thing as with the CMS. The first thing you get is a customer saying something very obvious like, can you customize this? And you have to say yes, but it'll take me a week. We've been working on it. We use D3 for graphs. Some of our stuff uses GNU plot, but D3JS is an absolutely wonderful thing, not part of Plone. Many things that we don't have. We are following tail lights. Plone is not in this position. We are. There's a lot of people who do what we do better. This is our proficiency testing app, and this is a pure dexterity app, our only one, and also something I'm very proud of. Some screens from that. It's very simple. They create a sample, release the sample, goes through workflow, sends an email to all the participating labs. Participating labs have a couple of weeks to come in here, enter their results. Then the results are all aggregated up, and the outliers are told that they really should have a look and see what's wrong with their procedures. And then some graphs, which were made by a guy much smarter than me. And this we actually host as a service. It's one of our ways of making money. But it really isn't yet a lucrative business. We do it because we're actually excited about it and proud of it. And I wish I could have done it justice. I see my name on this program, and it's really an honor to be standing here.
Can you say something about the background structure? So is it using folders to structure everything, or is it just plain? How does data get represented in the background?
In the back, we have folder types containing archetypes, and it's all fairly well structured. We have a client, and within a client we have requests for analysis and samples, which are... The client is a container for many of those things, including the client contacts, etc., etc. But there's also, we have, I think, 85 archetype content types, and they're everywhere. And a lot of them, like a batch, can live in a client, and a batch can live in a batch folder on the root. And I think there's a couple of other places where a batch can live as well. So there is a bit of shifting sands there. The way things are structured is in a great hierarchy, though. Yes, we also have a few catalogs that we installed because our analysis object, the root of this thing, is a full-fledged archetypes object. It always has been since I met it. And Jean's rolling his eyes at me. I don't have to look at him. So, in a misguided attempt to speed things up, I started splitting catalogs. I have a branch that brings those all back into the portal catalog. I gave up. But yeah, I will be going into a lot of detail about that tomorrow. And what I'm really going to be talking about there is how excited I am that this is about to get so much better for free because of the work that Plone has done in Plone 5.
You're on Plone 4 with this?
Yes, this is 4.3 yet. It hasn't yet.
Did you go from 2 over 3 to...
I never even saw Plone 3. Yeah. I've never even seen Plone 3. Also, we don't. We have a Diazo theme for Bika, written by Jordi at Interlab. It's an absolutely gorgeous, slick piece of work. I don't have a shot of it here, which is a pity. I thought there was one. But for the rest, we pretty much left it unthemed and just allowed it to happen. It allows us to do the work and not get bogged down in the details. All right. I've watched Lamuna, who is my boss and colleague, do this presentation, and he can do it for 3 hours and be very entertaining. I'll never compete. Also, for the few of you that are here, and for the great unwashed public, if you have a look around at your, or let's just say for my own purposes, the DTI, the Department of Trade and Industry of South Africa, foots the bill, at least half of it, provided I speak. So if you're up for it, and I think most of you would make great speakers, it's a good thing to look into. Pro tip. Hey, clap for me.